They say the truth has a way of revealing itself when you least expect it. For me, that moment came at my own 61 birthday dinner when my daughter-in-law looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Why are you still here?" If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story about family betrayal. It's about how one cruel question led to the most devastating response I've ever given. And trust me, nobody saw it coming. My name is Denise Washington, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew exactly where I stood in my family. I was the devoted mother who raised my son Marcus through 22 years of single parenthood after his father walked out. I was the grandmother who babysat every weekend so Marcus and his wife Shanice could have their date nights. I was the woman who'd worked 2 jobs for decades, saving every penny to help them buy their first house. I was also, apparently, the woman who'd outlived her usefulness. The birthday dinner was Shanice's idea, or so I thought. "Mama D," she'd said, using the nickname that once made my heart warm, "let me cook for you this year. Something special for the big 6-2. She'd insisted on having it at their house, the beautiful colonial I'd helped them buy with a 40-0 down payment from my retirement savings. I should have known something was off when I arrived and saw how nervous Marcus looked. My son had always been easy to read, even as a child. Guilt would practically radiate from his pores when he'd done something wrong. But I chalked it up to work stress. Marcus had been promoted to senior manager at the insurance company 6 months earlier, and the new responsibilities seemed to weigh on him. Shanice greeted me at the door with her usual megawatt smile, the one that had charmed me from the day Marcus first brought her home 5 years ago. She was stunning in that effortless way that made other women either envious or insecure. Smooth caramel skin, perfectly styled hair, and a figure that made her look more like Marcus's sister than his wife. "Happy birthday, Mama D," she chirped, pulling me into a hug that felt just a fraction too brief. "I made all your favorites: fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, the works." The house smelled incredible. I had to give her that. Shanice might have been many things, but she could definitely cook. As she led me to the dining room, I noticed how immaculate everything looked. Not just clean, but staged, like a model home ready for a real estate showing. "Where are the kids?" I asked, looking around for my 2 grandbabies, Malik and Zoe, who were usually climbing all over me the second I walked through the door. "Oh, they're at my mother's for the night," Shanice said quickly. "We thought it would be nice to have some adult time, just the 3 of us." That should have been my second warning sign. Shanice's mother lived clear across town, and the kids never spent weeknights there unless something was up. But I was so touched by the idea of them wanting to celebrate with just me that I pushed the nagging feeling aside. Marcus appeared from the kitchen carrying a bottle of wine, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Hey, Mama," he said, kissing my cheek. "You look beautiful." I'd worn my good dress, the navy blue one, with the subtle pattern that Marcus had complimented before. At 62, I still took pride in my appearance. Years of working on my feet in retail had kept me trim, and my weekly hair appointments at Glenda's salon kept my silver streaks perfectly styled. I might have been getting older, but I wasn't ready to fade into the background. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We talked about Marcus's job, Shanice's part-time work at the boutique, and the kids' upcoming school activities. The food was delicious, and I found myself relaxing for the first time in weeks. Maybe I'd been imagining the distance I'd felt from them lately. But as we moved into dessert, a beautiful birthday cake that Shanice had clearly bought from an expensive bakery rather than made herself, the atmosphere began to shift. I noticed the looks passing between Marcus and Shanice, the way they seemed to be communicating without words. "Mama," Marcus said finally, setting down his fork and clearing his throat in that way that always preceded difficult conversations. "Shanice and I have been talking about some things, about the future, about what's best for everyone." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" Shanice leaned forward, her expression suddenly serious. Mama D, we're concerned about you. Living alone in that big house, managing all those responsibilities, it's a lot for someone your age, someone my age. As if 62 meant I had one foot in the grave. I'm managing just fine, I said carefully. The house is paid off, I'm healthy, and I'm not even officially retired yet. But that's just it, Marcus jumped in. You shouldn't have to manage. You worked so hard your whole life, sacrificed so much for me. Don't you think it's time to let someone else take care of the details? I studied my son's face, looking for the boy I'd raised, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and tell me I was the strongest person in the world. This man across from me, fidgeting with his napkin and avoiding my eyes, felt like a stranger. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked. Shanice and Marcus exchanged another look, and she took the lead. There's this beautiful senior community about 20 minutes from here, Sunset Manor. They have studio apartments, meal plans, activities. You'd have your independence, but with support when you need it. A senior community. They were trying to put me in a nursing home. I don't need support, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I need my home, my independence, and my family's respect. Mama, please don't get defensive, Marcus said. We're trying to help. The house is getting too much for you to handle. And frankly, we're worried about the financial burden. What financial burden? The house is paid off, and I have enough savings to maintain it. Shanice leaned back in her chair, and for the first time all evening, her mask slipped completely. But for how long, Mama D? Medical expenses, home repairs, utilities, it all adds up. And then what happens to the house when when you can't live there anymore? When I die, she meant when I die and leave them my house and whatever money I have left. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about my well-being or their concern for my safety. This was about my assets. They wanted me out of my house so they could either sell it or rent it out. And they wanted me in a facility where my expenses would be controlled and predictable. I looked around the dining room, taking in the expensive furniture, the designer light fixtures, the artwork on the walls, all of it purchased with the financial stability I'd helped provide. The down payment for this house, the car payments I'd helped with when Marcus was between jobs, the wedding I'd contributed to, even though I could barely afford it. I think, I said slowly, that I need to go home and think about this. Mama, wait, Marcus started, but Shanice put a hand on his arm. Actually, she said, and her voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard before. Maybe that's for the best, because honestly, Mama D, I have to ask, why are you still here? The words hung in the air like a curse. Marcus's face went pale, and even Shanice seemed momentarily shocked by what had come out of her mouth. Excuse me, I said quietly. Shanice's eyes glittered with something that might have been malice. I mean, why are you still clinging to that house, that life? You raised Marcus. You did your job. Don't you think it's time to step aside and let the next generation take over? Step aside, as if my life was just an obstacle to their plans. I stood up slowly, my hands remarkably steady as I reached for my purse. Marcus was staring at his wife in horror, but he hadn't said a word to defend me. That silence spoke volumes. Thank you for dinner, I said, my voice calm and controlled. It was very enlightening. Mama, please. Marcus finally found his voice. Shanice didn't mean, oh, she meant it, I said, looking directly at my daughter-in-law. The question is, are you brave enough to own it? Shanice lifted her chin defiantly. I'm just being honest about what everyone's thinking. You're holding on to the past instead of planning for the future. I nodded slowly, filing away every word, every expression, every moment of this conversation. Well then, let me be honest too. You want to know why I'm still here? You'll find out soon enough. I left them sitting at that perfectly set table with its expensive china and its ugly truth finally exposed. As I drove home through the familiar streets of the neighborhood where I'd lived for 23 years, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: absolute clarity. They thought I was a burden to be managed, an old woman too stubborn to recognize her own obsolescence. They thought my house was wasted on me, my money better managed by them, my future something they could plan and control. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment my entire adult life, not consciously, perhaps, but the way a woman learns to prepare when she's raised a child alone, when she's fought for every opportunity, when she's had to be strong enough for two people for most of her life. When I got home, I sat in my living room, in my house, surrounded by my things, and pulled out the business card I'd kept in my wallet for the past 6 months. Gerald Morrison, estate planning attorney. A friend from church had recommended him after her own family had tried to manipulate her into signing over her property. Call him, she'd said, before you need him. Trust me on this. At the time, I'd thought she was being paranoid. Now I understood she'd been being wise. I picked up my phone and left a voicemail. Mr. Morrison, this is Denise Washington. I need to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. I have some estate planning to do, and I think it's going to be more complicated than I originally thought. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. The woman looking back at me wasn't the defeated, disposable old lady Shanice seemed to think I was. She was a woman who'd survived 22 years of single motherhood, who'd built a successful career despite every obstacle, who'd saved and sacrificed and planned for decades. She was also a woman who was about to teach her ungrateful family the most expensive lesson of their lives. Shanice had asked why I was still here. Soon enough, she'd understand that the answer to that question was going to cost her everything she thought she was entitled to. But first, I had some phone calls to make and some very interesting documents to review, because if my family thought they could discard me like an old piece of furniture, they were about to discover that this particular piece of furniture came with some very sharp edges. The devastating response Shanice was waiting for, she'd get it, but not in the way she expected, and definitely not in the timeline she was hoping for. Some lessons, after all, are worth taking the time to teach properly. Gerald Morrison's office was everything I'd hoped it would be: professional, discreet, and expensive enough to suggest he knew what he was doing. The mahogany furniture and wall-to-wall law books gave me confidence that this man could handle whatever family drama I was about to unload on him. Mrs. Washington, he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk, you mentioned on your voicemail that your estate planning might be more complicated than expected. How can I help you? I'd spent the 3 days since my birthday dinner thinking about how to explain the situation without sounding like a bitter old woman complaining about ungrateful children. But as I sat there looking at Gerald's kind, intelligent face, I decided the truth was the best approach. My son and daughter-in-law want me out of my house and into a nursing home, I said simply. And after our conversation the other night, I'm starting to suspect their motivations aren't as pure as they'd like me to believe. Gerald leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Tell me about your current estate plan. That's just it. I don't really have one. I have a simple will that leaves everything to Marcus, but that's about it. The house is paid off. I have about 200 zero in savings and a decent 400 in ONIC from my years working at Macy's. And your son knows about these assets? I nodded. Marcus has been helping me with my finances for the past 2 years. He insisted on it after I had that minor heart episode, said it would give him peace of mind to know he could help if something happened. Gerald made a note on his legal pad. Who has access to your accounts? Marcus is listed as my emergency contact and has power of attorney for financial decisions if I become incapacitated, but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Mrs. Washington, I'm going to ask you a difficult question, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Have you noticed any unusual activity in your accounts? Any withdrawals or transfers you didn't authorize? My stomach dropped. I don't check them that closely anymore. Marcus gets the statements and gives me summaries. Should I be worried? Let's find out. Gerald pulled out a legal pad and handed me a pen. I want you to write down every bank, investment account, and financial institution where you have money. Then we're going to call them and get current statements. The next hour was one of the most eye opening of my life. Gerald had his assistant call each institution while I sat there with growing horror, listening to account balances that were significantly lower than they should have been. My savings account, which should have had 185 zero, showed a balance of 127 zero. My 400 and ONEC had been borrowed against to the tune of 45 zero. Even my checking account was lighter than expected, with monthly withdrawals I couldn't account for. Mrs. Washington, Gerald said gently after we'd finished the calls, someone has been systematically draining your accounts. Good news is that most of these transactions require signatures or electronic authorization, which means there's a paper trail. I felt like I might throw up. How much are we talking about? Based on what we've discovered today, approximately 78 zero has been moved out of your accounts over the past 18 months. The pattern suggests regular, planned withdrawals rather than one large theft. $78,000. Money I'd worked decades to save, gone. Money that Marcus had access to through his power of attorney. What can I do? I asked, my voice barely steady. First, we're going to revoke his power of attorney immediately. Then we're going to request detailed records from all your financial institutions. If we can prove unauthorized use of your funds, this becomes a criminal matter. Criminal matter. My own son had been stealing from me. Gerald continued, but Mrs. Washington, I have to warn you, pursuing this could destroy your relationship with your son permanently. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about Marcus's silence when Shanice had asked why I was still here, about the nervous looks he'd been giving me for months, about how he'd insisted on handling my finances for my own good. Mr. Morrison, I said, I think my son already destroyed our relationship. I'm just now finding out about it. We spent another hour setting up what Gerald called protective measures. He revoked Marcus's power of attorney, put alerts on all my accounts, and scheduled a follow-up meeting for the next week when we'd have the detailed financial records. As I drove home, my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Hey, Mama, he said, and I could hear the forced cheerfulness in his voice. I wanted to apologize for the other night. Shanice was stressed about work and things came out wrong. Which things? I asked calmly. You know, the comment about why you're still there. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did she mean it, Marcus? Silence. Then she just meant, why are you still in that big house when you could be somewhere more convenient with people to help if you need it? More convenient for whom? I wondered. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course, Mama. What is it? Have you been taking money from my accounts? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. Mama, I've been managing your finances like you asked me to. Sometimes I have to move money between accounts for better interest rates or to pay bills that's not what I ask you. Have you been taking my money? I would never steal from you, Mama. You know that. It wasn't a denial, I noticed. It was a deflection. I'll be changing my banking arrangements, I said. I've decided I want to handle my own finances again. Mama, wait. Let's talk about this. You've been having some memory issues lately, and I'm worried about you making financial decisions without help. Memory issues? I'd never had any memory issues. What are you talking about? The other day you called asking about a conversation we never had, and last month you forgot about our dinner plans twice. Shanice and I have been worried about early signs of dementia. The audacity took my breath away. Marcus was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was losing my mental faculties to justify his financial abuse. Marcus, I said, my voice ice cold. I am 62 years old, not 92. My mind is sharp, my memory is fine, and I will be handling my own financial affairs from now on. Mama, please don't make any hasty decisions. Let me come over tonight and we can. I hung up. Then I immediately called Gerald Morrison's emergency line. Mr. Morrison, it's Denise Washington. My son just tried to convince me I have dementia to justify taking my money. How quickly can we move on those protective measures? I'll have emergency motions filed first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, Mrs. Washington, don't sign anything, don't give anyone access to your accounts, and document every conversation you have with your son or daughter-in-law. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a legal pad, writing down everything I could remember about the past 2 years. Every time Marcus had insisted on helping with my finances, every suggestion about moving to a senior community, every comment about my age, my capabilities, my future. The pattern was clear once I stopped making excuses for it. This hadn't been sudden. Marcus and Shanice had been planning this for months, maybe years. The financial theft was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Shanice. Mama D, Marcus told me about your phone call. We're worried about you. Can we come over tomorrow to talk? I typed back, I'm not available. Her response came immediately. We need to discuss your living situation. The offer from Sunset Manor expires next week. Offer from Sunset Manor? They'd already been in contact with nursing homes without telling me. I screenshot the conversation and emailed it to Gerald Morrison, then sat back in my chair to think. They were moving faster than I'd expected, which meant they were either more desperate or more confident than I'd realized. The next morning brought a visit I hadn't expected. A woman in her 50s with a kind face and a professional demeanor knocked on my door at exactly 9 a.m. Mrs. Washington? I'm Sandra Chin from Adult Protective Services. We received a call expressing concern about your welfare. My blood pressure spiked. What kind of concern? May I come in? The caller indicated you might be experiencing cognitive decline and making unsafe decisions regarding your living situation. Someone had called APS on me. Someone who wanted official documentation that I was incompetent to live alone. I let Sandra in and offered her coffee, my mind racing. This was escalating beyond family drama into legal territory. Mrs. Washington, I want to assure you that this is just a welfare check. Can you tell me a bit about your daily routine, how you're managing household tasks, your medical care? For the next hour, Sandra asked questions that were clearly designed to assess my mental competency. I answered each one thoroughly, demonstrating that I was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Mrs. Washington, Sandra said finally, I have to say, you seem entirely capable of independent living. Your home is well maintained, you're clearly managing your daily activities, and you're articulate and oriented. I'm not sure why someone felt the need to call us. I think I know. I said my son and daughter-in-law have been pressuring me to move into a nursing home. I refused, and now they're trying to create a paper trail that suggests I'm incompetent. Sandra's expression grew serious. That's a very serious allegation. Do you have any evidence to support it? I showed her the text messages from Shanice, told her about the missing money, and explained about the power of attorney I'd just revoked. Mrs. Washington, this sounds like potential financial abuse and elder manipulation. I'm going to document this visit as a welfare check with no concerns found, but I'm also going to give you some resources. She handed me a packet of information about elder abuse, including contact information for legal aid and support services. If what you're telling me is true, Sandra said, your family may be counting on you being too embarrassed or isolated to fight back. Don't let them count on that. After Sandra left, I called Gerald Morrison again. They called APS on me, I told him. They're trying to build a case that I'm incompetent. That actually works in our favor, Gerald said. APS found no concerns, which creates official documentation of your competency. But Mrs. Washington, we need to move faster. If they're willing to involve government agencies, they're planning something bigger. What kind of something bigger? Guardianship proceedings. If they can convince a court that you're incompetent, They can become your legal guardians and take control of all your assets. The room started spinning. They can do that? With the right documentation and testimony, yes. But we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm expediting your new estate plan, and I want to add some provisions they won't see coming. What kind of provisions? Gerald's voice carried a note of satisfaction that made me sit up straighter. Let's just say that if your son and daughter-in-law want to play hardball, we're going to make sure they understand the rules of the game. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister in Atlanta. Gloria, I said, when she answered, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. I laid out everything, the birthday dinner, the missing money, the APS call, all of it. Gloria listened without interrupting, though I could hear her getting more and more angry. That boy has lost his mind, she said finally. And that wife of his, Mama always said she had cold eyes. Gloria, I need you to know the truth in case something happens to me. In case they try to say I was confused or incompetent. Nothing's going to happen to you, Denise. But you're right to document everything. Do you have a safe place for important papers? I'm working on that. Gerald Morrison is helping me set up some legal protections. Good. And Denise, don't you dare let them make you feel guilty about protecting yourself. You raised that boy right, but somewhere along the way, he forgot who he was. After I hung up with Gloria, I sat in my living room looking at the family photos on my mantelpiece. Pictures of Marcus as a baby, as a toddler, graduating high school, getting married. In every photo, he was smiling, happy, loved. When had that love turned into entitlement? When had providing for him become enabling him to steal from me? My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Washington, this is Dr. Patricia Hayes from Sunset Manor. I understand you're considering our community for your future living arrangements. They'd given my information to a nursing home without my permission. Dr. Hayes, I never inquired about your facility. Oh, I was contacted by your family. They indicated you were interested in learning about our memory care services. Memory care? They were telling people I had dementia. Dr. Hayes, I want to be very clear. I have no memory issues. I am not interested in your facility, and whoever contacted you did so without my knowledge or permission. I'm sorry, Mrs. Washington. Your son was very convincing about your needs. He even mentioned that you'd been having episodes of confusion. My son was mistaken. Please remove my information from your files. After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, feeling something I hadn't felt in decades, pure crystallized rage. They weren't just stealing my money, they were stealing my reputation, my autonomy, my right to make decisions about my own life. They were painting me as a confused old woman who needed to be managed and controlled. But what they didn't know was that this confused old woman had just spent the day building an arsenal of legal weapons they never saw coming. Gerald Morrison had promised me a devastating response to Shanice's cruel question. Tomorrow, we'd start putting that response into motion. And when we were done, Marcus and Shanice would understand exactly why I was still here and why that was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. Gerald Morrison's conference room felt like a war room when I arrived Monday morning. The mahogany table was covered with documents, financial records, and what looked like enough legal paperwork to bury someone, which I supposed was exactly what we were planning to do. Mrs. Washington, Gerald said, standing to greet me, I hope you're ready for this, because what we're about to set in motion is going to change everything. Beside him sat a woman I hadn't met before, sharp-eyed, expensively dressed, with the kind of confidence that made you pay attention when she spoke. This is Detective Sarah Martinez from the Financial Crimes Unit, Gerald explained. She's been reviewing your case, and she has some very interesting findings. Detective Martinez opened a thick folder. Mrs. Washington, based on the financial records your attorney provided, Your son has committed multiple felonies. We're looking at theft, elder abuse, identity fraud, and conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud. My heart pounded. Hearing it laid out in criminal terms made it real in a way I hadn't fully grasped before. The pattern is clear, she continued. Systematic drainage of your accounts, followed by attempts to declare you incompetent when you started asking questions. This isn't a family dispute, it's organized financial abuse. Gerald leaned forward. Denise, Detective Martinez has agreed to coordinate with our civil proceedings. While she builds the criminal case, we're going to execute something I call strategic revelation. What does that mean? It means we're going to give Marcus and Shanice exactly what they think they want, right up until the moment we destroy them completely. The plan Gerald outlined was more comprehensive than anything I could have imagined. First, we documented every unauthorized transaction from my accounts. Then we'd traced how that money had been used and where it had gone. The results were staggering. They've been using your money to pay their mortgage, Detective Martinez explained, showing me bank records. Your 78-0 has been systematically transferred to cover their house payments for the past year and a half. But Marcus has a good job. Why would they need my money for their mortgage? Gerald and Detective Martinez exchanged a look. Because Marcus lost his job 8 months ago, Gerald said gently. He was terminated for falsifying insurance claims. He's been pretending to go to work every day while living off your money. The room started spinning. My son had been lying to me for 8 months, stealing my retirement savings to maintain the illusion that his life was successful. There's more, Detective Martinez continued. Shanice quit her job at the boutique 6 months ago. They're both unemployed, living entirely off your assets while planning to gain legal control of everything you own. I sat back in my chair trying to process the magnitude of their deception. So when they suggested the nursing home, they were planning to become your legal guardians, sell your house, and use your money to maintain their lifestyle indefinitely, Gerald finished. Classic financial elder abuse. What's our next move? Gerald smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. We're going to let them think they're winning, right up until they realize they've lost everything. The first phase began that afternoon. Gerald had me call Marcus and tell him I'd been thinking about our conversation, that maybe they were right about the nursing home. Mama, Marcus said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. Shanice and I just want what's best for you. I know, baby. I've been stubborn, but I'm starting to see that you're right. Maybe it is time for me to let someone else handle the responsibilities. That's wonderful, Mama. Why don't Shanice and I come over tonight to discuss the details? Actually, I'd prefer to meet somewhere neutral. What about that restaurant you like, Cascades? Tomorrow night at 7? Perfect. Mama, you're making the right decision. I promise everything is going to work out for the best. After I hung up, I looked at Gerald. I feel like I'm betraying him. Denise, your son has been stealing from you for over a year while planning to have you declared incompetent. You're not betraying him, you're protecting yourself from someone who's already betrayed you. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for the perfect outfit, not because I cared what Marcus and Shanice thought of my appearance, but because I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a woman in complete control of her life and her choices. The next night, I arrived at Cascades 15 minutes early and chose a table in the center of the restaurant where our conversation would be public but not easily overheard. Gerald and Detective Martinez were seated at a table across the room, close enough to provide backup if needed. Marcus and Shanice arrived exactly on time, both dressed like they were attending a business meeting. Shanice wore a conservative navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and Marcus had on his best suit, the one I'd bought him for job interviews back when I thought he was still employed. Mama, Marcus said, kissing my cheek, you look beautiful. I'm so proud of you for being open to making this change. Shanice slid into the booth beside him, her smile bright and predatory. Mama D, we brought all the paperwork for Sunset Manor. Once you sign these forms, they can have you moved in by the end of the week. Moved in by the end of the week. They'd been planning this with military precision. That seems fast, I said mildly. Well, there's no point in dragging it out, Marcus said. The sooner you're settled somewhere safe, the sooner we can all stop worrying. I looked at the papers they'd spread across the table. Admission forms, financial power of attorney documents, healthcare directives, everything needed to sign away my independence and hand control of my life to them. I noticed these papers make you my healthcare proxy and give you power of attorney, I observed. Just temporarily, Shanice said quickly, until you're adjusted to your new living situation. It's standard procedure. And my house, we'll take care of everything, Marcus assured me. The sale, the proceeds, all of it. You won't have to worry about any of the details. Sale. They were planning to sell my house immediately. What about my furniture, my personal belongings? Sunset Manor is fully furnished, Shanice said. You only need clothes and a few personal items. We can donate the rest to charity. Think of it as helping people less fortunate. They had it all figured out. Move me into a nursing home, sell my house, dispose of my belongings, and pocket the proceeds, all while convincing me it was for my own good. I have some questions about the finances, I said, pulling out a folder of my own. Marcus and Shanice exchanged a quick glance. What kind of questions, Mama? Well, I've been looking at my bank statements, and there are some transactions I don't understand. The temperature at our table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mama, you know I've been managing your accounts, Marcus said carefully. Sometimes I have to move money around for better interest rates or to pay bills. Like the 200 transfer to your mortgage company last month? Marcus went very still. That was a mistake. I accidentally used the wrong account for an automatic payment. I was going to transfer it back. What about the 800 the month before that and the 100 in March? Shanice's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the fact that all color had drained from her face. Mama, Marcus said, his voice strained. I think you're confused about those transactions. Your memory hasn't been. My memory is fine, Marcus. In fact, it's sharp enough to remember that you told me you got a promotion 6 months ago when you actually got fired for insurance fraud. The silence that followed was deafening. Other diners continued their conversations around us, oblivious to the fact that a family was disintegrating at table 12. Who told you that? Shanice whispered. Does it matter? What matters is that you've been stealing my money to pay your bills while planning to have me declared incompetent so you could steal the rest. Marcus leaned forward desperately. Mama, it's not what you think. I was going to pay it all back. The job situation was temporary, and I didn't want to worry you. So you decided to rob me instead. We weren't robbing you, Shanice snapped, her mask finally slipping completely. We were protecting your assets. You're too old to manage that much money responsibly. Too old at 62? Too naive, she said, her voice turning vicious. Do you have any idea how easy it would be for someone to take advantage of you? At least when we manage your money, it stays in the family. The audacity was breathtaking. They were stealing from me to protect me from thieves. And the nursing home is the best place for someone your age, Marcus said, finally showing his true colors. Mama, you can't live alone forever. The house is too big. The responsibilities are too much. At Sunset Manor, you'll be safe. Safe from whom? Safe from making poor decisions, Shanice said coldly. Safe from being taken advantage of by people who don't have your best interests at heart. I looked at these two people, one I'd raised from birth, one I'd welcomed into my family with open arms, and saw them clearly for the first time in years. They weren't concerned about my welfare. They were concerned about their access to my assets. You want to know why I'm still here? I said quietly, echoing Shanice's cruel question from my birthday dinner. You want to know why I haven't conveniently disappeared from your lives? They both stared at me, sensing that something had shifted in the dynamic. I'm still here because I'm not the confused, helpless old woman you think I am. I'm still here because I raised a son who I thought had integrity, and I'm disappointed to discover I was wrong. And I'm still here because you made the mistake of underestimating me. I pulled out my phone and made a simple gesture. Across the restaurant, Gerald and Detective Martinez stood up and began walking toward our table. Mama, what's going on? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. What's going on is that you're about to be arrested for elder, financial abuse, theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Detective Martinez reached our table and pulled out her badge. Marcus Thompson and Shanice Thompson, you're under arrest for multiple counts of financial elder abuse and theft. The restaurant went silent as other diners turned to stare. Shanice started crying, not the pretty tears she used for manipulation, but ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was crumbling. Mama, please, Marcus begged as the detective cuffed him. Don't do this. Think about the kids. Think about the family. I am thinking about family, I said, standing up as they were led away. I'm thinking about how family is supposed to protect each other, not prey on each other. As the police car pulled away with my son and daughter-in-law in the back seat, Gerald put a gentle hand on my shoulder. How do you feel? He asked. I considered the question seriously. I felt many things: sad, angry, relieved, vindicated, but mostly I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, completely in control of my own life. I feel like myself again, I said finally. The legal proceedings moved swiftly after that. The evidence was overwhelming, and both Marcus and Shanice eventually accepted plea deals rather than risk trial. Marcus received 18 months in federal prison and was ordered to pay full restitution. Shanice received 1 year in probation. But the real devastating response came in the form of my new estate plan. Gerald had helped me create a comprehensive will that left detailed explanations for every decision. Marcus would inherit nothing. Every penny of my estate would go to organizations that fight elder abuse, with a special provision creating the Denise Washington Foundation for Financial Elder Protection. I also included a letter to be read at my funeral whenever that day came, explaining exactly why I had disinherited my son. The letter detailed his theft, his lies, his attempts to have me declared incompetent, and his wife's cruel question about why I was still alive. 6 months later, I was sitting in my living room, in my house that no one could take from me when Malik and Zoe came to visit. CPS had temporarily placed them with Shanice's mother while their parents served their sentences, but I'd been granted supervised visitation rights. Grandma Denise, 8-year-old Malik asked, why did Daddy and Mommy have to go away? I looked at these beautiful children, innocent victims of their parents' greed and stupidity, and chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make very bad choices, baby. And when they make those choices, they have to face consequences. Are you mad at them? I thought about that question seriously. Was I mad? Not anymore. Disappointed? Absolutely. Hurt? Beyond measure. But angry? That had burned itself out in the clarity of justice served. I'm sad that they forgot how to be a family, I said finally, but I'm not mad anymore. Later that evening, after the children had gone back to their temporary home, I sat in my kitchen reading a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from Marcus, written from federal prison. Mama, I know you probably won't read this, but I had to try. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I remember who you taught me to be, and I'm going to try to become that person again. I love you, even though I know I don't deserve your love anymore. Marcus, I folded the letter carefully and put it in a box with the others he'd sent. I wasn't ready to forgive him, might never be ready, but I wasn't ready to completely close that door either. What I was ready for was the rest of my life. At 62, I was finally free to live on my own terms, make my own choices, and use my resources to help other elderly people avoid the betrayal I'd experienced. Shanice had asked why I was still here. expecting me to quietly disappear from their lives so they could claim their inheritance. Instead, I'd shown them exactly why I was still here, because I was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than they'd ever imagined. Some people see aging as a process of diminishment, of gradually giving up control and independence. But I'd learned that sometimes getting older means finally having the wisdom and courage to refuse to be diminished by anyone. I was still here because I chose to be here. And that choice, that defiance, that refusal to be discarded, that was my most devastating response of all. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.